Debbie, why don't we take a second question from there before we take a couple of the questions that we have here? Debbie?
The next question is really it's something of a follow-up to the first one, and it's from the same questioner. And what he says is that one of the things that we have recognized in terms of looking at how to proceed is that we in the United States have governing institutions that essentially allow unlimited lending power, a federal government that can borrow and spend at will, and also a dollar as a global reserve currency. With that said, obviously, American institutions, although they're not without flaws, and certainly we have made mistakes, do in fact serve us well. However, in looking at how to proceed, one of the things that we have recognized is that the rest of the world, in particular Europe, lacks the mechanisms to take action as we can in America. The question of whether they have the inclination to do that is a separate issue. But one of the things that we have been forced to grapple with, and the reason why we're grappling with it is that we are told that the question of fiscal bailout is not a decision made simply with the interest of U.S. institutions, but that it is being demanded of us internationally, and that therefore, if there's going to be any cooperation internationally, the bailout has to proceed because the rest of the world doesn't have the mechanisms that we have. However, what we have argued here is that the rest of the world might not cooperate in the same mechanisms of economic recovery that we can employ here in the U.S., but that if we started here, even if in the very first phase credit, debt, and exchange rate crises arise, that in itself could be motivation for a restructuring of the global system, and that we should simply be prepared to deal with that. Certainly you've addressed it in your four-power agreement. But what I'm really asking is if you agree that it's true that the mechanisms that we have here to affect economic recovery simply don't exist in the rest of the world.
Well, that's irrelevant. We have to recover. Our going down the tubes is not going to help the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is pretty much incompetent. And adapting our policies to the rest of the world is just like an agreement to commit joint suicide. The policies of Europe, for example, every nation in Europe is Western and Central Europe in particular, is clinically insane. Their policies are clinically insane. We don't adapt to the policies of a madman or a pack of madmen. We have a system that works and they don't. We should give them the benefit of enforcing our system. We should go back to what Franklin Roosevelt intended still on April 12th of 1945 and forget what Truman did in 13th of April 1945. Roosevelt opposed Keynes up to the moment of his death. On the following morning, Truman brought Keynes in, and also rejected the idea of eliminating colonialism. Roosevelt was anti-colonialist. Truman, under British influence, was pro-colonialist. I know what happened on the 13th of April. I know what the effect was in various parts of the world. The first thing was done, the United States, under Truman, kissed the ass of the British Empire by turning the Japanese troops loose in Indochina, where they'd been captured by U.S. influence, the OSS and Ho Chi Minh. And we recaptured, for colonialism, Indochina, with the effects which ultimately came out of that. That was done with the consent of Truman. where the postponement of the liberation of India was done to kiss the butt of Truman. What was done in Indonesia was to kiss the butt of Truman and kiss the butt of the British. Truman was not an honest person. Truman belonged to a group of fascist sympathizers who were also in the Congress, in the Republican Party, and also in the Democratic Party when Roosevelt was elected. The American Enterprise Institute is a typification of that kind of fascist tendency which existed then and existed today. What's been run, Wall Street, is controlled by organizations with the same policies as the pro-Hitler, the pro-Mussolini organizations of Wall Street back in the 1920s and 1930s. And we are submitting to a policy imposed upon us by Truman, which is to kiss the butt of the British Empire. Truman was part of a group whose policy was to assimilate the United States back into the British Empire. And that's what you're getting here. All we have to do, and I've specified this on the 25th of July, 2007, and supplemented that up through September as to what we have to do. That is what we had to do. Now, what I also specified, Russia's crazy now. So what? It's driven crazy by these policies. It's gone into the trap, the bear trap of the British Empire. China is confused. India is somewhat confused, less so, but somewhat confused. Continental Europe, Western and Central Continental Europe, there is no sovereignty on Western and Central Continental Europe. None. So we want to adapt to their system? Bunk. They should change their system. Our responsibility to the planet is to change and save the United States according to its constitution and the economic policies which would have been agreed to by Franklin Roosevelt. Take that as a standard which corresponds to our historical standard. That's the way we make policy. We do not make policy with the consent of the British Empire. And the president should not have embraced the Queen. That was a terrible mistake. We have to check with the disease control people on that one and see if we had to take remedial measures to protect him. He may have gotten some fatal infection from that. No, we have a policy. We are right. The rest of the world has been wrong. The United States was created to free the people of this country, and hopefully the world, from the kind of system that existed in Europe then, and the kind of system which still dominates Europe today. Our policy on Russia and China and India is obvious. These are largely Asian nations, or Eurasian nations in the case of Russia, which have different interests, but they're compatible interests in terms of common features, mutually common features. If we agree, put this thing through bankruptcy, shut down everything that has been done under Bush and now under the present president, since July of 2007. We shut that down. We go back to our Constitution and said, hey, sorry, buddies, you made a mistake. Our Constitution says we don't do this. So we're going to cancel it. Call the game off for rain or something. We're going to cancel this one. We're going to go back to what we have to do, because what we're doing now is insane. And the other authority you have on this is the fact that if there's an attempt to continue the present policies, the United States and other nations will soon cease to exist. I'm talking about the very short term. We're on the brink of something which is modeled by Germany, Weimar Germany, up to 1923. We have been going into a collapse of the economy, the physical economy, losing up to 700,000 jobs at a crack. We are now in the collapse phase, as Germany was under the Weimar conditions. Then, in the spring and summer and autumn of 1923, the very collapse of the German economy physically resulted with the monetization of the crisis, resulted in hyperinflation. We are now in a global system. We have now reached the takeoff point of hyperinflation. There is no solution for this system. Anybody who supports this system is implicitly a criminal. We have to put the world into bankruptcy or reorganization and eliminate the present system. And we have to base that on the fact that it's our dollars that are out there, that are floating out as credit system. It's our nation we have to defend, and we defend our nation. And we extend the hand of cooperation with an international credit system consistent with our Constitution, with other nations, to assist them through cooperation in coming out of this mess alive. If we create this kind of agreement with Russia, China, India, and other countries would automatically join in. I mean, for example, Japan would join in immediately. Korea would join in immediately. Other countries would join in. Iran would join in immediately. You know? Khamenei would join. If Khamenei decides the wind is blowing in this direction, we're going to pull this off, he will put his foot on the side of pushing that kind of reform and joining it and cooperating with it. He may do it on his terms, so what? That's the way life goes. Just do it. So no, there's no excuse for our condoning in any way such a deal with European nations and other nations. We should simply shut the whole damn thing down. Shut it down. It's bankrupt. We'll create a new system. All right, want to make me president? I'll do it tomorrow morning.